Hi everyone, thanks for joining today for talking about HTML5 in QtWebKit. This talk is not just about hacking HTML5. I believe here we are not web developers, right? We don't make websites. I'm not a very advanced, skilled HTML developer. I'm following the spec and implement it. It's mostly for people that makes hybrid application, right? Like those that want to mix a bit of HTML contents with their C++ application or Qt application. So how you can basically use the new feature of HTML5 in your application. So it's not going to be how to develop an HTML5 website. The agenda for today, so a bit of an introduction. What is HTML5 and what is all that noise that we hear about that? What are the new features for user interfaces, like what the user can see, and what you can use for helping you, making the stuff under the hood, basically, what the user don't see. The user doesn't see. And the conclusion. About me, so my name is Alexis Menard. Yes, I'm French. You probably noticed my accent. I'm sorry. I'm the QtWebKit team lead in INDT. So INDT is the Nokia Research Institute in Brazil. There I'm taking care of like 8 people that work on WebKit. Oops. I used to be a troll, ex-Oslo troll. I used to work for Qt development frameworks. So I worked 3 years on Qt, QML, Graphics View. Last year I was doing a talk about Qt Graphics View in depth. You guys, some of you guys receive N9. I work on the N9 browser. I made the video support for HTML5 on it. So if you like it, you know who made it. Half of it was made by me and another was by a colleague. I'm an open source advocate. I contribute to many open source projects, of course, including WebKit. And I'm now an occasional KD developer. I used to be much more active than now, mostly because of my family. I started as a student project 2006, and then I work on Plasma mainly. Plasma is the user interface for KD. I refactored it quite a lot. And then I launched the mobile user interface for it, which now become Plasma Active, which is currently shipping. I've seen some example on some of the partners there, so it's good. So working for INDT in Brazil is very cool because I left Norway, and by snow, cold weather, and darkness, my party friends, and the awesome Norwegian food based of sausages, for Brazil, which is slightly different landscape, beach, sun, I go to work in short every day, and I finally was able to join my family, so my wife and my little daughter, and I drink caipirinhas all day long, so it's very, very good. No, seriously speaking, let's back to the subjects. HTML5, so what is that? So I found the codes, which was the main area that has not been adequately addressed by HTML is vague subject referred to as web applications. So by web application, I mean like stuff like Gmail, Google Docs, and all those stuff. So this specification attempts to rectify this. So helping people that make web apps to make their life easier, basically. And with this awesome logo that they came up with. HTML5 is a huge update. It's like huge. It's the successor of HTML4, of course. HTML4 was standardized in 1997, so it's a while ago. And world has changed since then. So they basically clean up a lot of stuff based on common usage of what they noticed on websites and how web developers were dealing with HTML. For example, the HTML language itself didn't have a grammar. So it's like, for instance, if you, for instance, open a tag, like, a table tag, and then you don't close it, it's a mistake, right? It's bad HTML code. But there was no specification that was saying, okay, what should you do? Close it automatically, or raise an error, or try to do some magic. So if you take your faulty HTML code and you render in different browsers, then you will have different results because there were no norm for it. There was no grammar. There was no error handling specified by HTML4. So finally, they came up with a norm, so a standard, so you can say, oh, if I don't close this tag, then I can do this. Then, so finally, browser can implement the same way of handling errors while parsing HTML documents, which in the future, it will help having your HTML render the same cross-browser, Internet Explorer, Google Chrome, Firefox, and so on. On the side note, in WebKit projects, it meant that we entirely rewrote the parser for HTML because of this. So at some point, WebKit switched to an entire new parser just for following the spec and the new norm of HTML5, which is good, right? So we hope that other browser vendors will do the same, namely Internet Explorer, Opera, and so on. I believe they do. I'm not checking everything, but I believe they do. It also extends existing elements. For example, input tags. You can have input type button and stuff like that. And there are new ones, like for instance, input type email. So it will handle for you, an input type, like a field where you have to type an email address. So it will check for you if there is like a @ if it's a correctly formatted address and so on. It's basic testing, right? Of course, it's not going to check if the server exists and so on. But at least, it avoids a lot of JS code that you find in every single website that check this. So finally, websites can start moving to this rather than having their own JS code that actually do the same. And it add also, for instance, input type color, so you finally have a color picker. Stuff that help the web developer and people that make HTML code a lot. And add new elements, for instance, video tags and summary or detail tags, which I will not go into detail why, but it's new features basically. New tags, sorry. And you have new features, like for instance, drag and drop. You can, for instance, drag from your desktop to a web browser, and you can finally get drop events, and then you can finally handle drag and drop properly. So you can drag drop from one side to the other, like from the desktop to your browser, and then the browser from the desktop, which is good. So you can finally upload file without going through the file dialog and then show stuff and so on. So of course, not that much website yet implement those, but when the standard will be, when HTML5 will be standardized, which is not the case yet, then the years that will follow, then browser will be compatible with the standard, which means that you can finally rely on it and move away your old code, basically. You have also offline storage database, you can finally have website that store something on your computer, so the next time you open them, then they can react to a previous time you were there. Something much more advanced than cookies. So many features. I will not go to all of them. Just for the record, CSS3 is not part of HTML5, right? It's HTML is just about HTML. CSS is about style sheet, right? Though I will talk about it in this presentation because I think it comes with it. It's not part of the standard, it will not be part of the standard, but I think it's both come together. You have to use it together to I'd say, use this so-called Web 2.0. So how do you find a web application today? For instance, Roku video player, Spotify is one of them. It's an hybrid app that's half the content is online, and then you get your clients on your computer, and then it uses your computer to actually play music, but get the content from online, stream it from online. So those are web app basically, because half their user interface is HTML, but they also are application because they use stuff on your computer. The OV store on the N8 is one of them too. It's using HTML5 for the user interface. Netflix, some of the client of Netflix, I think on the PS3 is using it. Of course, not the one on Windows because it's using Silverlight, but some of the client actually use this. So what are the success stories of those kind of web app? It's they have creative user interfaces, right? It's they're usually very appealing, they're nice to look at. Spotify is great. And they have a very, very great experience when they're connected to the web. Spotify is just about this, right? You have a lot of playlists, you can share playlists, people can vote, you can start. It's when you're connected, those apps are very added values comparing to, I'd say, a dedicated music player, right? which just have local content. And they receive updates, right? Since you're connected, if they can change the user interface by just, changing the file they're using online, right? So that the user interface may change from a day to another one. And it doesn't require any user interaction, right? Because they just deploy new HTML5 on the server, and then they just render it on the local app, and you get a new UI for free. And they are not just web pages. They are integrated with the platform, It's like they store stuff on your hard drive, It's like they integrate with the platform like copy pasting and stuff like that, right? So it's like they have added values comparing to a regular web page. So, of course, this targets like, hybrid app for you guys, because I'm not talking about, Google Docs or stuff like that. So what are the new features for user interfaces? HTML5 finally come with audio and video tags, and audio and video tags for playing audio files and playing video files. It's very obvious. So video tags is basically to get rid of Flash. Let's put it like this. Get rid of Flash for video playback. I mean, the #1 use case of Flash after games is, I'm not sure actually, probably the first use case of Flash is video playback and then games. And the problem with Flash is like, unless the latest version, there was no hardware acceleration. And even today, there is no hardware acceleration on Linux, if I recall correctly. So it's really bad for playing HD videos. Finally, if you have a video tag that is built in on the web browser, then the browser can actually, the web engine can integrate with the platform and then have support for video acceleration, which is very, very good. Unfortunately, there is an active debate on which codec the video tag should support, whether it's WebM or H264. Hopefully they will solve it, because this is a mess. But still, it is there at work. And by the way, all the feature I'm going to talk about today is the one that works in QtWebKit, so these features you can use today. And my presentation is made in HTML5. So for instance, you see it's dynamic. If you want it in silver, you get it in silver. If you want it in blue, you get it in blue. So you can pick it blue. And I can right away demo the video part by just clicking on it. And then I got the video playing. So, and this is hardware accelerated, which is very good. And by the way, also the presentation runs on the WebKit 2-based browser made with QML and Qt5. So I eat my own dog food. While making this presentation, I also fixed many times Qt5 and WebKit, which was very great. So yeah, you can show videos finally, which is great. You can hide them, and when you hide them, it's not like a plugin, right? We know that the video is hidden, so we don't have to do some magic with the plugin. We can just, start rendering it while it's still playing with just Humor, but we just don't draw anything on the screen because we know that the video is hidden. The plugin is always more complicated because the plugin so either run on separate windows, so then it starts to be a mess, or it's like windowless, but then it's like playing on top of the video, so it's like on top of the web page. It's just a huge mess, plugins. So the video is really nice because it's very well integrated. So on QtWebKit, they work on all platforms we support. Mac, they use QuickTime. On Linux, they use JStreamer. And on Windows, we use Qt Multimedia, which happens to use now the Windows Media Foundation, which is the Windows API. So that's all for... So as I said, I will talk about CSS as well a bit. I just come up with features randomly, right? Is that there's no... I think it's feature interesting. For instance, like you can finally do border radius, like having rounded corner images, which help a lot people because you don't have to make your own images and then do the rounded rect in GIMP or Photoshop, and you can finally have built-in support for it. And then this is like end up into a proper painting API rather than having multiple images set on your web server. It's like finally this is handled by QPainter, for instance, and that works well. You can also animate with CSS, so you can make this awesome animation that I made with the clouds. So just so that you understand a bit, I'm gonna just show you the code. So the cloud is just, as you can see, a CSS thing, which just load an image. And then you got the drop, which is like the small rain thing. And then I have multiple of them. So as you can see here, like I create my cloud, and I create all my drop, right? And then I would say, so that's the animation with just fold, so it's like moving, right? Then I set the duration. Then I set the easing curve, so timing function, they call it, linear. And then how many times I want to run the animation, I say infinite. So. And the cool part is, if I come back here, is that you can specify keyframe, and it will say, okay, at 0%, my drops will be at opacity 1, so you see them, right? And then the transform will be, so translation will be 0, so their original position, which is just under the cloud. And then at 80% of the animation, I would say opacity is still 1, but I move them around, and then WebKit will interpolate for me all the position in between, so you don't need to care about it. And then at 100%, I would say opacity 0. So from 80% to 100%, it will animate the opacity from 1 to 0, right? So you have this fade-out effect, kind of, right? And then also the translation. CSS, animation CSS, very good comparing to JavaScript. Before, everything was JavaScript. You know, you make a timer, and then you start moving stuff around. That was the only solution you had. The advantage of CSS is that it's easy to use. You see, like the keyframe, very easy to use. You understand it very well. There are useful timing functions, like you can specify in what time, how many times you want to run it, and so on. So it's very, very easy. And one of the major advantages of CSS animation is better performance. Why? Because on WebKit, the CSS animation run on separate layer than the page you render. And this particular layer is hardware accelerated. So we use OpenGL for animating them, which means that animation gets fast. And in most cases, they solve 80% of the use case you had before where you just move stuff around, like typical drop-down menu that you have and stuff like that. So I recommend to use CSS animation over JavaScript glue code or JavaScript, you know, hacking code you had before, which I had also, because they are just hardware accelerated, which is so much better. There is this new canvas element. So it's easy. Let's put in one word. It's just like a QPainter, but on the web. It probably have less feature or more feature, but like it's just like QPainter. It's an imperative 2D API. So same, it's an interactive HTML5 presentation, so we can just do it. So you get, from the document, you get the elements. So canvas example smile. So if I go back to my source code, you'll see that here, I got a canvas, right? Canvas element. Perhaps I should increase a bit yeah. So I got canvas, which has an ID canvas example smile. So I get it in my variable. Of course, the canvas element, the API is only JavaScript, right? You just do comments on JavaScript. So you can get then a context from the canvas. So there is the 2D context and there is the 3D context. I'm not talking about the 3D context yet, so let's stick with the 2D one. And then when you get the context, it's just like if you get a QPainter. You can just do context.bugging path, then it will start putting a path, then you can say context.lines width, whoops, equals 4, and then you can start drawing everything you want. So I just did a small example. I'm a bit lazy to type everything, so I just copy paste it, but you'll see it's very easy. So I just draw an arc, and then I move my painter around. So I just do multiple arcs, and then at the end I stroke everything on the screen. And if I evaluate this code, then it makes a really nice smiley. So yeah, that's just this. So you get the power of doing custom drawing, which is very, very good. I think it's a very nice improvement to the HTML in general, because you can finally do painting easily. Why you would use that? chart is a very good use case of it. It's insanely easy to draw like bars with this. It's like you just have your old data that are processed, then you get it in JavaScript, then you can easily draw a graph, like charts, you know, of 80%, 90%, and so on. You can draw lines easily. It's like I'm pretty sure that it already exists, charts library based on Canvas. So if it's not, it will. It's probably people will come up with. So it's like, this was really hard to do before because it's like, that for me, it's a huge improvement. You can also write simple 2D games, you know, like Pac-Man stuff. It's like very easy to write with this. And you can also use it for certain types of animation. You know, you can, draw, clear, draw, and so on. So it's like, it's just like using QPainter, right? So you can also use somehow QPainter for doing animation, right? So it's good for that. You got also WebGL. It extends JavaScript, same to allow 3D contents. It's also a context of the canvas element, you know, so instead of getting the context 2D, you can get the context 3D, and then, boom, you have OpenGL access. You can just draw GL code. Like, it's just using the OpenGL APIs, the 2.0, and you can draw anything you want. So no need for a plugin, which is very great. I mean, people like me that work on a web engine, they hate plugins. So the less plugins we use, the better it is for us. So then you have like raw access. You can do everything you want. So all the fancy demos you see on the internet about HTML5 is like most probably using WebGL. Unfortunately, I'm running a WebKit 2 based browser. We don't have yet WebGL working there, so I cannot make a demo. But I have Google Chrome. I could try it, but that's fine. You can find demos online anyway. What about under the hood improvements? So you got JavaScript got like a lot of smarter selectors. You know, you were used to get element by ID, which is a bit like limited. Now you can, for instance, like get elements by class name. You can say, okay, I'd like to all div, or I'd like all tables, or I'd like, I don't know, all h1. You can also query selectors, you know, like CSS selector. You can query selector all, and makes life so much more easier. For instance, the example is like, oh, I'd like all the selector h1 with just like a type CSS type slide. So it's like, then you get a list of it, and then you can do stuff with it. So I use it for, in that particular use case, I use it for moving my slide around. So I get all, and then I can move them around. Oops, later rendering issue. Web workers. So what is this? It's like, you know, in JavaScript, his main problem is like if you have like heavy JavaScript code, you know, something that computes a lot, then, you know, it may slow down the web browser. So now you get this web worker. It's basically a way for you to offload scripts processing in a separate thread. So for instance, in this example, so I create a script, you know, and I create a worker, and I specify which JavaScript file it will use, and then this will be the JavaScript file that will be executed. And then on the the worker will start. And if you look on the worker.js file, then I just try to find prime numbers, right? So I just go around, and then as soon as I get one, I post a message, and then my main script will get it on this worker on message handling, you know, like worker on message means that you will receive the message from the worker, and then you can do anything you want. You get the event, and then you can get the data what you sent. So I send the prime number. So that's really nice too. You can finally offload stuff. WebKit's taking care of you creating the thread. WebKit's taking care of the messaging between the two. You just use it like this, post and an on message. So one you post, and the other you get a callback, basically. So I also encourage to use that if you want to offload a bit, so you keep the UI responsive. Local storage, let you save data on disk. This is also very nice. So you can finally have websites that are a bit less stupid. They remember what you did last time. or web applications that are less stupid. So this one is very easy to use. It's like, it's a key value based API. You store a key, you store a value for a key, and then you can get it. So, and the data is stored on the hard drive of the user. So next time you visit the page, you can query it, and then you can see if there was something stored before. So I have a small example. So for instance, on my presentation, I have a button that will save the current slide I'm looking at. So I just save it. And then if I reload the page, of course, I'm going back to the beginning of my web page. And then I implemented, like, if I press the R key, then it will actually look for the local storage and see which slide I store, and it will just restore it, last time I've seen. So that's cool too. Makes nice values for people that reopen the app, basically. Of course, you could do that easily in C++, right? If you have a hybrid app, you can just make a Q object that stores this into Q settings, and then you're done. But how many C++ line of code you need to do this versus 2 lines? So it's like, you can use those, right? That's what my talk is about, like showing you new features that you can use in your hybrid app so that you can save C++ code for it. This is one example. There's also application cache. So the way it works is like, it's not a cache where you put stuff, it's like caching resources. So on the HTML tag, you specify a manifest, and the manifest is like, you describe what you want to cache on the hard drive. But I'm talking about resources, like, I have this huge PNG image that I load on my website, and well, I want to store it on the hard drive because the next time the guy is visiting or launching the app or visiting the website, I just don't want it to download it again. So you can finally, in the manifest, say, on the cache part, you can finally say, okay, well, please save my image.png on the hard drive and use it next time you visit the website. It's like cache, the web browser always cache data for you, right? Like they were trying to be smart. But this is a way for you, web developer or hybrid app developer, to specify what to cache to the web browser, which is slightly more advanced and better than what the browser were doing before. So what browser actually do today, they will still do it tomorrow. But this is a way for web browser to be aware of it. So if your CSS file is huge, which I don't recommend, by the way, but if it's huge, then you can just say, okay, cache it. Same for the GS file, same for PNG files, same for HTML files. Then there's another part of this manifest, which is network. So you can specify which files of your application or website needs network access. So that if the user goes to it, you can finally have a good handling of, I don't have internet connection. So, and then you get this fallback part where you will say, okay, if any network file is being accessed, then I will fall back to another one. So you can finally gracefully handle cases where there's no network access. Instead of having like, can't connect to network, and then ugly page from the web browser, right? You can finally, on your web app, you can say, okay, well, there is no network, but I'm running locally. So it's like, okay, I can finally fall back to, offline.html that may be a bit nicer, or just have the features, but limited to local access, basically. So I just made a small table to recap. So if you're offline, everything that is described on the cache manifest will use the cache, right? So it will load from the disk and use it. If you're online, it will check if it's an updated version for you, and then if it's not, then it will update, right? If it is. Network, if you're offline, all the files that are described under the network part, they will not be used. So they will just fall back to the fallback part. But if you're online, of course, you will just always use the remote file. That's also a way for you to enforce using a file on the server that you want to be sure that they use that one, the last version, and not something that is on the cache. A CGI script or something like that is most probably one you put there. And the fallback, if you're offline, it will use the fallback. Of course, my example before was very simple, right? I say fallback star offline means that any network file that has been accessed will go to offline. But you can refine. For every file, you can say, okay, fallback to that one, fallback to that one, fallback to that one. And so if you're offline, then fallback will use the fallback. And if you're online, of course, it will use the remote. So same as the network, right? How you enable data storage with QtWebKit? You can, in QWeb settings, you can set the local storage path. So this is what the small demo I did with the current slide that I saved. You can override the path by specifying where you want to store those data. And otherwise, by default, you save it to the Q desktop services data location, which is in Linux .local/cache, whatever. And you can also set the offline web application cache path, which was what I was explaining before. This is where it's going to store the PNG file, where it's going to store the CSS that I want to cache. There are many attributes. I didn't talk about the local storage database enabled, but I just mentioned it briefly because if I talk about everything, I won't have time. So anyway, this is basically allow you access to a database kind of thing, just not like the local storage where it's just like key value. This is like, so you get full power of a database, you know, select, insert, update, all those SQL language basically. That works also in QtWebKit today. And if you want to enable everything in one shot, there is a shortcut, enable persistent storage, boom, you're good to go, everything is enabled. So everything will work. If you have HTML code that is using it, then it will just work. If you don't enable it, then it will just do anything. It will still load, it will still parse, it will still execute, but will not do anything. So one of the strengths of QtWebKit is integration with C++, right? So all I was talking about, it's just a tiny bit of HTML5, right? You can easily integrate with your existing app. So if you see benefits of using HTML5, then you can easily integrate it with your existing app. So I just remember that on WebFrame, you can add a C++ object so that you can expose your C++ API to your web world. So you can mix both, right? You can mix HTML5 and your existing logic that you have in C++. So for example, here, I create my object, and then I just have a slot, and then on the main frame, I can add it to JavaScript window object, my object, and then I instantiate it, like this part, right? And then in JavaScript code, in my web world, I can just use it like this. My object, it's a global object in the JavaScript global object, and then I was just like, call it. So that's a very cool feature of Qt. You can mix both worlds. So I hope this will help you to understand how you can use HTML5 as well as what you already have in Qt, like based on Qt, right? HTML5 will help you to write part of your UI if you want to. That's what I meant. And you can still interface with all you already have. It's just like, don't think about HTML5 and HTML like something that just runs on a web browser. It can totally run on a separate, like on your app, basically. You can also, from C++, evaluate JavaScript. It will just you specify the JavaScript as a parameter of evaluate JavaScript, and it will just run the JavaScript in the web world for you. So it's also a way from your C++ world to command the HTML world. And then if the function has a return value, then you get it as a quivariant. You can also add complete widgets to pages with QWeb plugin factories. So you can have your Q widget that show up in the page too. But I said we don't like plugins, so it works, but I don't recommend to use it. But if it's, for instance, you see that, for instance, in HTML, you're not very happy with table. It's like to make tables, and then you want to use Qt Review. You can just do it with this. So you can still make your UI in HTML, and then if you feel that it's not going to fulfill everything you need, you can still sneak in stuff from Qt. So that's good too. So I like when people ask questions, so I reserve a lot of time for questions. So that's it. If you want to get started, there is HTML5rocks.com. So like it has a lot of examples on how to use it. HTML5 is huge. It's still not finished. There are like millions of features, and it will take me a day to explain everything. On the wiki page of QtWebKit, I forgot to put the link, but I should. You can find it on Google. So it's like on the wiki page of QtWebKit on webkit.org, you can find what feature of HTML5 we support and what is the status, if it's beta, if it's experimental, if it's not implemented at all. So we are not yet, the Qt part of WebKit is not yet in par with, let's say, Google or Apple. So they support more features than we do. Like for instance, Google is like way better for everything that is like WebGL than, let's say, Apple or Qt, for instance. But we're good. We are working hard. So it's gonna come. If it's missing, it's gonna come. So. And even if you heard about WebKit 2, I did a talk just before about WebKit 2, you know, it's like QtWebKit, the layer of WebKit 1, it's not going to receive any improvement in Qt 5. But everything that happens on the core, on web core, like on the core of the engine, you'll get it anyway. So any new HTML5 feature that doesn't require a layer API in QtWebKit, which is 80% of them, then you'll get it for free. So don't worry, QtWebKit 1 will, in any cases, get updates somehow. So, and the WebKit one, we don't remove the code, it's there, it's work, so don't worry. Otherwise, there is also this cool website, Canvas demo, that shows what you can do cool stuff with Canvas. And also, of course, the W3 specifications are pretty good. It's like really nice to read. That's how we base our work, basically, to implement them. So HTML5 is like full of great stuff. It powers application of today. Already today, many websites use HTML5, even if the standard is not yet finished, because just web browser use it. And it will for sure power the web of tomorrow. Like, it's a for sure. It's like web apps, like Google even made an entire operating system on top of that, like Google Chrome OS, right? Like just a web browser, basically. So it's like, it will power the web of tomorrow. So you better look at them also. When you evaluate, there was a talk about whether I should use QML, whether I should use HTML5, whether I should use C++. I think it's up to you. It's like up to your use case. But you should give a try to HTML5. You can achieve pretty cool stuff. Like I did the presentation, right? It's like it has fancy animation. You see, like fade in, fade out. And I didn't use any already made framework. I just made it by myself, and it was very quick. So. And I'm not necessarily a very skilled HTML developer. I'm an implementer, so I recommend to give a try. So I'd like to thank you for being here today, and if you have any questions, just bring it. But you have to wait the microphone first.
Do you have a website which is totally made with HTML5?
Yes, there is. Unfortunately, we cannot. I know one for sure. We can't access it here because it's like Pandora in US, like this radio online player. The entire website is made in HTML5. There are many of them. As like I actually have a demo here. Well, let me see. I will like just activate it on my here. Just put a very ugly iframe. That's in my presentation. Here, as you can see, it's like this is an online website that is just like using Canvas, right? And it's an entire drawing thing. You can do a lot of things with it. So like, unfortunately, the toolbar doesn't show up for some reason, but like, you can specify gradients. You can basically do drawings, and this is an entire HTML5 app, right? So you can like have buttons here, you know, you can specify the colors and so on. This doesn't have any C++ code, right? It's online. So you can do pretty advanced stuff, right?
Okay, thank you.
And Gmail. Google Docs are HTML5 apps. Like they use a lot of features from HTML5. You just open the source code of them and then you grab for some, keyword from HTML5. You see that they use a lot. Funny enough, I discovered the other day that, when you are on Gmail and someone talks to you, there's this ding ding, it's like this sound. I was expecting them to use audio element for it. No, in fact, they still have a Flash plugin that is size 00 that they hide on the top of the website. So I was like, no, guys, no. So I think they do that for compatibility, but still, no. So yeah. There are a lot of examples. Like you don't have like full features. You have like full features HTML5 websites, but you have many of the existing websites using features that are already implemented. So.
Yes, hello. The web worker process, is it integrated with C++? In the web worker, can I call C++ code?
Web worker? What did you say? Script?
Web worker.
Yeah,
the worker process, is it integrated with C++? Can I, over the web bridge, if I start a web worker process, can I call C++ inside?
No, so it's built in WebKit, so it's like where
it's JavaScript only.
Yeah, it's JavaScript only.
Okay, thank you.
We followed the spec for this. It's not a QtWebKit feature. It's a spec of HTML5.
Hello. Does QWebKit support geolocation API?
I didn't talk about it, but yes, we do. As I was saying, I cannot explain everything, but we do support geolocalization. The N9 is using it. It works. You can use it. Yeah? It works. Okay. Yes, on phones, it will use the GPS and so on. It will actually use the underlying API, but of the operating system. On desktop, I'm not very, very sure that actually it works on every platform because Windows doesn't have API for it. So we can't use it. And it depends the platform basically, because we need a platform that gives us geolocalization information, right? Yeah. On Mac, you have it.
Yes.
But on Linux, you have it with GeoClue, right? But on Windows, I don't think there is anything. So I'm not sure it actually works.
Okay.
So that's the problem with some of the features, is it's a bit inconsistent, depending the platform you're running on. But geolocalization is mostly for mobile phones, and then that works.
Okay, thank you.
That works on Symbian, that works on Migo, that works on MyMO.
Hi, you mentioned this worker, and that means that threads come to JavaScript, but JavaScript has no mutexes or anything. For instance, it's possible to access the DOM elements from the worker, and then what would happen if I have two?
Yeah, well, you're a bit limited of what you can do on the worker. It's accessing the DOM and so on is not recommended.
Not recommended or not possible?
Actually, I'm not sure it's possible. I have to check myself, actually, but it will not crash. That's for sure. That you can modify the DOM from the worker, I'll be fair, I don't know. I have to check, but it's a good question. But it will not crash for sure, because the way the messages stuff work is posting. It's just like Qt, right? It's not direct access. So it's it's going to post to some kind of event queue and then process one by one. So,
but there are no such threading techniques like semaphores, mutexes, or anything else?
No, you can't, but you don't have that in JavaScript, so you don't need this. So it's the worst case you can get is an undefined object, right? Let's say in a worker you access something on the DOM. I believe that you can access stuff on the DOM, but the worst case what you get is an undefined object, right? We just don't do anything in JavaScript. We just throw an error, but not crash. So you can easily check every time you run the worker if my object that I want to access is undefined. That means it has been deleted by someone. Then you can handle it properly, right? So you don't need mutexes. You just rely on JavaScript features, I'd say.
Okay, thank you.
But I believe you can access it. I don't see why you can't. So, but perhaps mistaken, but needs to check.
Hi, you mentioned about hardware acceleration for CSS
yes.
effects. What's the hardware acceleration situation for the Canvas 2D context and SVG?
So for SVG, I'm not very sure because I don't work on the SVG part. though I believe there is someone that works on it there. I remember. But so otherwise, fortunately, Andreas is not here, but he worked a lot on it. But for the CSS, it's for sure hardware accelerated. For Canvas 2D is not. I don't think it is. We just do normal Qt intercourse. I'm not sure, but same I need to check. I mean, it's like huge. I don't work on those parts, so it's like, yeah. But I can check. It's very easy. Or I can point you the person that knows.
Oh, hello. I have the question about the security in the storage feature.
In the?
A question about the security in the storage feature in
Yes.
HTML5. How is this works in WebKit? Because, for example, we're loading some evil page which is trying to read something from the hard disk or store some huge data.
Well, it's like it means that to get an exploit from that means that means that someone had access to your hard drive and your user accounts and then start writing into your home directory, which already is like requires a very huge exploit. Like you need to be able to write into your home directory of the user. What it does though is like you get the website and like the file of the website and store it and reload it. It's not as worse as having like if you load an HTML5 that is faulty with an exploit inside, it's the same. The cache has nothing to do with it. It will just cache it on the hard drive. What you're talking about is like if someone modified the cache, right? But that means that you already have access to the user account. That's already a huge security flaw on the machines itself, on the IT system. So then WebKit can't do anything about that. So if the user accounts, like let's say Unix is on Linux, is you violate it, it's like already too late for WebKit. The cache just take what is online, put it on the hard drive. If someone managed to modify the hard drive, then it's like it can do way worse than this. So the real security issue for WebKit is what comes from online. If the HTML files is faulty, then that's a problem. That's what WebKit is trying to handle. But saving on the hard drive and someone modifying it, then no, we can't have control on this.
And the second question, do you have any idea when the HTML5 specification will be finished?
No, I'd say 2016 or something, probably. But I have no idea. It's like takes a long time. But like that's the thing is like I think at some point they will finally say okay, because like there are drafts, right? And some of the drafts are marked as like advanced or very stable or like all web browsers of the market already implemented it, which means that the spec itself is good. I think at some point they will say okay, we take what is already there plus some that are on very advanced status, and then they close it. And then the next stuff is going to be for the next version. Now, when they will do this, then no one has control on that. It's like huge political discussions. But like many of the spec, you need to implement them to find their flaws, basically. Like when people come up with ideas and spec, write a spec, and then when browser vendors start to implement it, then we find flaws. I contributed back to the video spec because there was some problem with it. So it's like, you never know. I mean, just like C++, right? C++ 11 was standardized like, I don't know, 2 months, 3 months ago, right? Or something like this. It's like took how many years? It's like almost 11 years. The last number was 99, right? Or 2003. 2003 is like, come on. It's the same, we don't know. And plus, even if the standard is released, then it will take some years for browsers to be fully compatible with the standard. So if you do an entirely HTML5 website and you rely on features that were so-so, and it will take, even after the standard, it will take some years for you to be sure that your HTML code is going to render properly on every browser of the market that support HTML5. That's the problem. And especially Internet Explorer, they are very, very slow for implementing stuff. Well, they make progress, they make huge progress now. They're finally opening up their mind, so it's good. So yeah, I don't have ETA for that. I wish I could. Any other question? No. Thank you.